Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy. This right here is the Spyderco Cat. I want to thank my buddy John, who's JAF Blades EDC on the Instagram, for sending this little guy along. And let's jump on into the size comparison here. Right here is your Spyderco Delica, your Ontario rat number 1, and your rat number 2. No, this is the 2, this is the 1. I'll get that someday. I'm moving along here. Here's Spyderco PM2, which is a substantially larger knife. I mean, we can see this is not a big knife, the cat here. Your Spyderco Valaton, because it just happens to be on the table. So you can see the cat is slightly less huge than that guy. And, oh, what the heck? Oh, another small gentlemanly sort of carry, your Medford Marauder. So anyways, there you go. That's your size comparison. One thing I want to highlight, actually, is that this knife, I learned this in the process of making this review. This knife is made in Taiwan by Spyderco. But that said, it's not the same Taiwan that a lot of Spyderco's best-known folders are made in. There's the Taichung plant, and then there is just plain Taiwan. This is apparently a different workshop entirely, so don't necessarily expect the Taichung quality that you've come to expect there. And this is actually, interestingly, the same people who are going to be making the Spyderco Rhino, which is interesting. I didn't make that distinction previously, and so we'll see how that goes. But anyways, so there you go. That's the Spyderco Cat, and let's go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly, and give this little cat its 9 lives worth of reviewing. Okay. So on the good side, first off, the blade is really made to cut. That's not something that you should have to say about a pocket knife, but it works out here. The blade stock is not too thick, a little thick in the Delica, that's all. It's relatively thin behind the edge. The steel is 440C, which is A-okay. Newer ones are in CTS BD1, which is also okay. And, you know, you're good to go on the blade. This can cut things. That's a beautiful thing. Next thing is the liner lock on this. You can see this is using just a regular liner lock here. It locks up right about 60%. It's plenty secure. There's no play, there's no stick. It's just a good lock. No complaints there. The clip on this guy is your Spyderco wire clip, and I love the wire clip for a couple of reasons. It's easy to replace, it's easy to rebend. It's a nicely done sort of clip, and this one is very nice because it's rather long, which means that you have very good control of the smaller knife in the pocket. The shorter wire clips, or shorter any clips, make it a little bit easier for the knife to come out, but the longer clip relative to the knife size is a good thing. It's also ambidextrous. You can flip the clip around and put it on this side. It's still a liner lock, so it's not a completely ambidextrous knife, unlike a back lock, but still, it's something to keep in mind, and I like the clip very much. The ergonomics on this guy are also pretty nice in the hand. You get a good grip up here, although there's no jimping or anything up top here. But you get a good grip, and then there's plenty in the back here to fill your hand up a little bit more. I feel like I've got a nice, probably 5-finger purchase on this knife, unlike, for instance, on the Dragonfly, which really locks in nicely for your thumb and forefinger, and the rest is just kind of you're grabbing, and with the FRN, you still feel like you've got the ability to do plenty of cutting, but the ergos on the Cat are way superior to the Dragonfly, at least in my opinion here. The price on this guy is fine. You're looking at $50 here, and it's 440C, it's G10, it's metal, it's a wire clip. You know, that's A-okay. It's a little cheaper than the Delica. It's fine. The price is fine. And then the build quality is accordingly fine. Yeah, it's not a high-end Taichung sort of folder. It's not a custom. Frankly, the fit and finish is not, oh my God, by any stretch, but for $50, it's A-okay. It is perfectly functional. There's one thing that bothers me that we'll get to later, but that's mostly me. So, there you go. That's the good here. The build quality is just fine for a $50 knife. The price is just fine. The ergos are pretty good. The wire clip is pretty good. The liner lock is just fine, and the blade is actually effective for cutting. Let's talk about what's great here. To me, what's great about this knife is its size, absolutely. The blade comes in at under 2.5 inches, no matter how you measure it. The amount of cutting space is even less, but even coming from the very edge of the line to the very tip, you're at 2.5 inches. And that's a magic line for many cities. Chicago is one of them. Boston, frustratingly, is another of them. This is going to be legal in most places in the U.S. It is locking, so some places in Europe are going to have a problem with it, but it's nice to see an inexpensive option that's fine, that's good to go. That's available to people who live in those jurisdictions who are dealing with those kinds of stupid laws. So, to me, at least, that's what's great about this knife, is the fact that it's relatively small and it comes in under those magical legal lines. Spyderco is very good at doing that. Let's talk about what's not so great about this knife. So, okay, on the bad side, first off, something that's entirely taste but bugs me a little bit, that's this knife is kind of vanilla. There's really nothing so interesting to the design. It's just, if you picture in your mind's eye what a 2.5-inch Spyderco would look like if drawn by some random jackass, this is about what you would see. There's nothing really inspired about the design. There's nothing super interesting about it. It doesn't jump out at you in the same way that something like your PM2 or your Dragonfly does. It's fine. It's a 2.5-inch knife by Spyderco. That's what this looks like. And, okay. It's just not that inspiring. Next thing for me is the lack of sharpening choil. You can see here that there's no little cutout here, which allows you to sharpen the full length of the blade. And that's okay. Spyderco very often lacks that, like on the PM2, but at least on the PM2, they've tried to sharpen all the way to the plunge grind here. Whereas on this guy, you can see there's actually a fair amount of metal that's completely unsharpened at the bottom there. A fair amount, but still. There's some metal down there, which means if you're cutting into something, you might catch up on that. And, well, that's a separately ugly little bit of thing. I mean, $50, okay, maybe they're not paying them to sharpen the whole blade, but still, look, not a big fan of that. Next thing, the detent on this guy clashes fairly hard with the blade as you're opening it. There's no ramp for the detent ball to go up, and so as you're doing it, you kind of hit the detent ball, and then you have to push past it with a little bit more force. And so it makes the closing on this entirely unsatisfying, and way more so than a lot of Spyderco's other folders. So, not a big fan of that. I feel like this needs a detent ramp, and if this were my knife, I would probably put one in there, just to make things a little bit easier. Then, finally on the bad side, this is running on Teflon washers. Now, okay. This is probably the most okay I'm ever going to be with Teflon washers because it's a liner lock with relatively high lock bar tension. This is not going to be an action showpiece. You are not going to flick this knife open. And in fact, there is just no way to flick this knife open. It doesn't do it like that. It's Teflon, it's tight, it ain't happening. And so, you don't need the super action of actual real washes. It's also meant to be a relatively small and relatively legal folder where a click deploy isn't actually what you're after. In some municipalities, they've got gravity knife laws, and so you'll get cops doing things like this if they think you're suspicious and want to stick a charge on you or something. Trying to get your knife to come open, and this will resist that. And, also, it's made at a factory, a random factory in Taiwan. You're not necessarily going to get incredible tolerances off of that, and the Teflon does help to mask any issues coming from that. Then finally, it's $50. That's pretty high for Teflon washers, but okay, whatever. Either way, so it's okay here, but I still don't love it. And I had to look long and hard at my biases in the mirror to avoid calling that ugly. At this price, it's borderline okay, but I'd still prefer to see real washes in there. But that's just me. So anyways, that's the bad. I still don't love the Teflon here. The tent really hits the blade ramp pretty hard as you're putting it on there. It needs a little bit of a ramp there. There's no sharpening choil, and the design on it is just very vanilla. In terms of your ugly, honestly, there's nothing that's terribly ugly here. To me, personally, I really dislike Teflon, but that's just me. That's my bias. For everybody else, it's probably just fine. And so let's go into the final conclusions. Final conclusions here. Look, the knife is fine. The Spyderco Cat, it's good to go. I mean, it's nice in the hand. It's nice in the pocket. The price is A-okay. My complaints about it aren't all that relevant, and there were no real big problems here. The thing is, though, I just can't really bring myself to give a crap about this knife. I mean, it's A-okay. There's no problem with it, but there's nothing calling to me. There's nothing that's making this stick in my brain. In fact, I'm going to after the review here, I'm going to put it in the box. I'm going to ship it back to my buddy John, and I'm not necessarily sure I'm ever going to think about this knife again. It's a good knife. It's fine. It's solid, but I don't really super care. Someday somebody's going to ask me for a recommendation of a smaller Spyderco, and I'm going to name off the Urban, the Chaparral, the Dragonfly, and I'm going to sit there going, oh, and what's that other one? The one with the Teflon and I'm going to be thinking about this guy, and maybe I'll come up with it. Maybe I won't, and that's okay. because there are a lot of good options. The Spyderco Urban is another good option in this size range. It's a little over the 2.5 line, and it's a non-locking blade, but it's something you should consider as well. The Spyderco Chaparral is another good comparison here, because it's got that a little bit more junk in the trunk there as well. The materials are nicer with a carbon fiber ply on top of some G10 and S30V steel. It's also twice as expensive, and I will say that the Cat lacks its Achilles heel, which is the very, very thin lock bar here. And so, and also the Cat comes in under 2.5. The Chaparral's just a little over. The best comparison is probably the Spyderco Dragonfly, which is a knife I like a lot. It's a solid gem. But this guy, the Cat, does have some advantages. I mean, the Cat feels more substantial. The construction looks a little classier. The Cat is definitely easier to use one-handed. It's much nicer to work with a liner lock than it is with a back lock one-handed, because that can be a little bit tricky. There's more fiddling involved with the Dragonfly. And, you know, it's just, I don't know, it fills the hand a little bit more. It's, in some ways, the Cat's got advantages. But the thing is, the Dragonfly is much, much lighter than the Cat. Let's see here. Get the measurement. The Cat comes in at 2.57 ounces. Your Dragonfly comes in at 1.19. That's a big difference there. The Dragonfly is a lot smaller in the pocket than the Cat, which can be a nice thing as well. The Dragonfly, for a lot of people, seems a little bit less scary, although neither of these is, oh my god, super murder knife. But nonetheless, and, you know, the Dragonfly, you've got a little bit more option. You can get it with a G10 scale if you want, although then you're paying more money than this guy. And you can get the VG10 steel or the ZDP 189, which is a real super steel. Personally, for me, I am going Dragonfly every day of the week. I like this knife a lot more than I like this guy, because it just has a little more panache. It's a little more interesting. It's different. Whereas this is very vanilla. But the thing is, if you want something that's a little bit bigger in the hand, it's a little maybe classier, and just something different, the Cat is a solid option. And so that's kind of where I land. Like I said, the Cat is fine. It's a decent Spyderco knife. There's nothing so wrong with it. And so if you're looking at it and you think it's going to meet your match, then go for it. Worst case, you're out $50. And yeah, so there you go. That's the Cat. I kind of do wish I could, you know, it's a nice knife, but I really do wish I could muster a slightly stronger set of felines. Because it's the Cat? Okay, yeah. Anyways, but mostly, I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.